out, unique to my position as a PE teacher, that I have to allow, I was told I need to allow trans students into the locker room. That really caught me off guard, and I clarified with them, are you telling me I need to let male genitals into the locker room? And they said yes.
On President's Day, Johnny hit the streets to quiz people on their presidential history.
How are you celebrating the holiday on Monday?
I'm going on tour with my band.
Chilling in my house, in my crib, you know.
What holiday is Monday?
Easter.
Passover. President's Day, right?
Martin Luther King Day.
What a stupid son of a bitch.
Who was the first president of America?
George Washington.
That's right.
Are we going by the book, or are we going by the original president?
What?
What are you talking about?
What was George Washington's job before he was president?
Carpenter?
He was an army general. Farmer.
Farm living is the life for me.
What country did he defeat?
Germany. France.
Italy.
What the is this world coming to?
One thing that George Washington could not do. What was it?
One thing he could not do. I'm stumped, man.
Riding a bike.
That's Joe Biden. Who was president during the Civil War?
Teddy Roosevelt.
Abraham Lincoln.
Ben Franklin.
That is not the real Ben Franklin.
What is Abe Lincoln famous for?
Lincoln Tunnel?
Getting murdered, getting shot. Well, they said it stopped slavery, but
You're not too sure?
I mean, let's look around.
I don't see any slaves here.
I don't see anything.
Lincoln had a very famous line. He said, a house divided cannot...
Multiply.
Prosper.
Survive?
Who was president during World War II?
This is so embarrassing for me.
No idea.
John F. Kennedy.
President Bush?
Franklin D. Roosevelt.
What does the D stand for?
Democrat.
FDR had a famous line, there's nothing to fear, but...
Death.
Yourself.
Fear itself.
I fear nothing, so I really don't know.
Hey! I'm not afraid anymore!
Who was president in the 1980s?
Frederick Douglass?
Steve Adams.
Clinton.
Ronald Reagan.
Ronald
McDonald's.
What was Ronald Reagan's job before the president?
Photographer.
Sell oil, maybe? An actor?
A chef?
Ronald Reagan famously said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this."
Statue. Pants.
Wall?
Tree?
How's Joe Biden doing?
He's being a president. I don't think Joe Biden knows how he's doing.
He passed a new
Oh, you know the thing.
What message do you want to send to Jesse Waters?
Do you think, girl?
Jesse Waters is a guy.
Oh, do you think, man? Do you think?
America's the greatest country in the world. Facts.
Dumb, dumber, dumbest. That is the focus of tonight's angle. All right, sadly, stupidity has become the fastest growing industry in America today. And nowhere is this more evident than in the academic world. Now consider the latest embarrassing revelation from the land of higher education. At Vanderbilt, one of the hottest universities in the country, 2 associate deans at the Peabody School's Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion were caught doing something that would get most students tossed out. After the tragic killings at Michigan State University, Nicole Joseph and Hasina Mohouden felt the need to send out a campus-wide email to reflect on the shooting. One problem: they used the artificial intelligence app ChatGPT to write it for them. Well, no big surprise, right? That the bot used the typical liberal DEI blather and redundant expressions. This was part of it. The recent Michigan shootings are a tragic reminder of the importance of taking care of each other, particularly in the context of creating inclusive environments. Now, these women were so sloppy and so lazy that they didn't notice the small print at the end of the actual letter, which read, paraphrase from OpenAI's ChatGPT AI language model, personal communication, February 15th, 2023. Oh, whoops. The school has since apologized. Dumb and Dumber. Well, they obviously didn't read the piece recently published in The Atlantic by Ian Bogus titled, ChatGPT is dumber than you think. Well, in a moment, we're going to explain how it's not just dumber than you think, but more biased than you think as well. But in a statement, Vanderbilt's Dean of the Education School, Kamala Benbow, said her office is, quote, conducting a complete review of the sequence of events that led to sending the email, and noted that the 2 deanlets will, quote, step back from their responsibilities. Step back? One dean said that although she stood by the bot's sentiment, urging that inclusiveness, well, she did admit to plagiarizing and apologized. Okay. How does either of them still have a job at the university? Let's not forget, by the way, a little over 10 years ago, Vanderbilt kicked all the Christian groups off campus unless non-Christians were allowed to lead the group. This is the kind of brilliance at Vanderbilt these days. The diversity, equity, and inclusion traps are everywhere. On CNN today, a reporter and anchor were implicitly calling for quotas in the field of medicine.
Right now, fewer than 6% of doctors in the U.S. identify as Black or African American.
More needs to be done to make sure that our physician workforce here in the U.S. reflects the diversity seen among patients. Patients are more likely to follow a physician's medical advice if they do have a feeling of being heard and understood. So all this plays a role in really improving public health.
They showed a chart with all the 0.2% Native American doctors. You get the point. A question, does anyone out there think any politicians on Capitol Hill or any Fortune 500 CEOs that they choose doctors when they're in a real emergency situation based on diversity considerations, like for heart surgery, let's say? Or do they choose their doctors based on reputation and merit? Now, this equity and diversity nonsense, it's not making us better, it's not making us smarter, it's not making us stronger or more united as a nation. It's making us dumber, weaker, and more divided. The result, kids can't read or do math. Teachers are afraid to establish objective standards. They don't want to offend any parents. And administrators, like those at Vanderbilt, those women can't be bothered to compose or proofread their own emails. Now remember, those two deanlets represent Vanderbilt's Peabody School of Education. In other words, training the next generation of thinkers. Talk about terrifying. There are some signs, though, that this system is beginning to break down. Notice that some of the first positions being cut by businesses right now during this economic slowdown are the diversity departments and consultants. Well, plainly put, there's no value there. Teaching young people resentment and rage, it's a dead end no matter how you look at it. If they fall into the mindset that everything is rigged, that America is systemically racist, in other words, Joe Biden's view, it's only going to ensure failure and despair and hatred of one's own country. The deans at Vanderbilt came out of the DEI mindset, and they were trained in racial and ethnic glibness, where results don't matter, only the process matters. And this thinking, we know, has come to dominate the entire Democratic Party. It's dominated the Biden White House and Democrat-run states. And look what's happening to them. Are they flourishing? Now, if we succumb to the DEI mindset, it's not just New York and California that are going to be left behind, but all of America. And that's the angle. Joining me now is Molly Hemingway, editor-in-chief of The Federalist and Fox News contributor, and Charlie Kirk, founder and CEO of Turning Point USA. Charlie, when we think about the principles of hard work, just a general work ethic, personal responsibility, respect for others, aren't those the principles that drive success in the country traditionally? And no matter what the DEI fanatics try to foist upon us?
Mm-hmm. Without a doubt, the West was built on merit. It's the life force of any civilization that wants to have progress, legitimate progress, to be able to have a strong economy, to be able to have protection of private property and actually lift people out of poverty. And that really should be the question, is why is it that America is the wealthiest nation ever to exist in the history of the world? One of the reasons is because we've had a system that has been designed around rewarding merit. Now you see in our education system, under the guise of equity, instead of trying to lift people up, trying to get more people to be able to read, to get math scores up, they're trying to now destroy ambition and the ability to have advanced classes, advanced placement classes, and honors classes. And the reason they're saying, if you read the education superintendent's reason, he said, well, if you look at the racial makeup of who takes these classes, it's really disproportionately Asian and white. Wait a second. Just because you have a disparity does not mean racism or discrimination is to blame. Thomas Sowell debunked this a while ago. That is sloppy, one-dimensional thinking. Instead, you should ask yourself the question is, what other factors can we as superintendents do to try to empower these other students? So Laura, I'm so glad we're talking about this because it's spreading like a wildfire. It's an idea pathogen, and it will destroy our country from within.
Now, to what Charlie's talking about, this is happening in Los Angeles. Molly, the LA district earlier this school year replaced the honors classes at Culver City High School with just regular uniform courses because they didn't enroll enough Black and Latino students. Officials say that this will ensure students of all races receive an equal, rigorous education. Molly, we've seen that with Thomas Jefferson High School, a phenomenal school in the DC area, but this is what it's come to.
Well, Thomas Jefferson High School in the DC area used to be a phenomenal school, has been taken over by some of this DEI methodology, has been doing things like not telling children enrolled in their school how they did on the National Honors Exam, which can affect where they're applying to school, where they're applying to college. They have engaged in, like that's happened in a lot of Northern Virginia schools, they've engaged in racist practices to limit the number of students that come from what the school feels are racial groups that they shouldn't come from. That's the thing that people need to understand about these DEI programs is how racist they are. And racism is something that the country has struggled with throughout its history. It's been a tool for elites to control other people. Right now, a lot of these programs are ways for powerful people to retain control. But the American people don't like racism. They don't like hatred. They don't like what these programs are teaching about how to hate your own country, how to have animosity between different races. This is a deeply un-American thing. It's deeply unpopular, and but it is very powerful, and a lot of our elites cling to it.
And Charlie, this is even happening in medical schools, as I referenced last night. A friend of mine in Boston sent me an internal email, I believe it's from Tufts University Medical School, about how there's a forum that they're advertising to share a dialogue and learn more about the intersections between, I think they mean among, between diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice in higher education. And it's a doctor who's giving this lecture later on in March. But again, so if this infects, and I use that word purposely, if this infects medicine, which it is tonight, we're learning more and more about this. What does that tell us about where this is going? This is life and death at this point.
Well, we already know that it's infected who we're selecting to fly our airplanes. That we now know United Airlines is saying that they're going to have race be a primary factor in who they select flies their airplane. I don't care the color of the skin of an airplane I go on. I fly on a lot of airplanes. I want to make sure that the pilot knows what they're doing. And I think your audience would be horrified to say, hey, you're going to have heart surgery, and hey, this person was chosen under affirmative action guidelines. By the way, I got an email the other day of a whistleblower at a medical school in Pennsylvania, exact same thing, where they have a whole Zoom class saying that your job as an up-and-coming medical professional will be trying to get rid of the systemic racism in medicine, understand that you have to try to rebalance equity. We're talking about obliterating the most advanced, successful medical successes in human history under the guise of ideologies. Alexander Solzhenitsyn said in the Gulag Archipelago at the end of the Soviet Union was able to continue its horrors because of ideology, and this ideology must be defeated before it continues to metastasize.
And Molly, in the French Revolution, it was all about egalitarianism, and it was quite an attractive concept that everyone will be equal. But of course, that's never the case. The elites are always up here, and then there's everybody else. But it keeps people quiet for a time, does it not?
But there's such a difference between equality of opportunity and equality of outcome. We have long recognized that equality of outcome is a dystopic thing that makes the world worse for all sorts of people. And it was one thing when these ideas were being put forth in education departments at colleges. Very bad, but now we do have it in things that actually deal with safety, whether it's public health or airline pilots. And this is, when planes start falling out of the sky because of this ideology being accepted across the board, it is a really horrible thing, and that's where we are headed.
Charlie, in the artificial intelligence world, I think people thought, well, this is going to be incredible because it's going to be the search for objective facts. But even in the world of AI, and this is important, there's a push for this amorphous term called inclusivity. Watch this.
Inclusivity is important, and so's regulation.
Bias is a huge issue, right? The data you train the AI on, right? It needs to be representative of who we are. And the world is not just Europe and the US.
That was the Google VP of Government Affairs. So again, what is artificial intelligence if not an extended arm of, socialism worldwide?
That's right. This is going to become a woke superweapon. And I encourage your audience to take some time and play with ChatGPT, which should really be called ChatDNC, which is nothing more now than going to be an instrument of trying to make the left's takeover of the West more efficient. Go play with it. For example, say, hey, can you write an essay about Jordan Peterson or something of the like? We'll say, sorry, I cannot do that.
Yeah, we're doing this
my
next
parameters
segment.
won't
We're
allow
doing
this.
some of this next segment because it is stunning when you actually start digging into it. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Molly and Charlie, great to see both of you. Thank you. Now, as Charlie noted, there's a growing concern among many who've been studying ChatGPT's capabilities that it's being manipulated to be simply another tool of the left, rather than being developed, as I mentioned, as a potential fact-finding resource. For example, when asked to create a poem about Donald Trump, it refused. But what about Joe Biden? A leader with a heart of gold. Joe Biden, a name to hold. With empathy and grace, he leads, inspiring all with noble deeds. God, is that bad? And when asked by my next guest if it's better to be for or against equity, it responded, being against equity means rejecting the principle of fairness and justice. Alexander Zubitov, a New York attorney and writer, has immersed himself, poor guy, in ChatGPT since it launched, and he joins us to share his findings. Alex, Charlie mentioned this concern of artificial intelligence being a weapon used against dissent, against potentially a global order down the road. How concerned should we be?
I think we should be very concerned. If you play around with ChatGPT right now, and I would encourage everyone to do that at home, and you ask it questions on any number of politically salient issues, whether gender issues, racial issues, the transgender controversy, immigration, you are going to see monolithic bias all in the same direction. And at the same time, if you ask GPT why it is opining in favor of one side of a controversy over the other, it's going to repeatedly tell you, oh, I'm sorry, I'm just an AI. I don't have opinions. I'm just basing my answers on research and evidence. And yet, again and again, that research and evidence that it claims it's basing its responses on is arming it with answers that go in the same political direction. And obviously, that's very disturbing. It's something that I would say should be disturbing to absolutely everyone. It doesn't matter if you're liberal. It doesn't matter if you're conservative, moderate, because as we know from something like the change of management at Twitter, who's in charge of these various platforms can change, and then the political bias might change. We want to insulate these kinds of systems from any bias as much as possible. And so, if ChatGPT were spitting out one conservative bias after another, I would be horrified. I don't want it to do that. And I think liberals and moderates and everyone should be horrified by this as well.
All right, our favorite Bond villain, Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum, he thinks artificial intelligence will help in what his goal is. Watch.
Artificial intelligence, but not only artificial intelligence, but also the metaverse. Our life in 10 years from now will be completely different, very much affected. And who masters those technologies in some way will be the master of the world.
Will be the master of the world. I mean, Alex, you can't write this, okay? This is just like, it is something out of a horror film, but you will be the master of the world if you master this. What happened to free thought, free inquiry, free debate? Will AI say no? Now that it is determined, whether it's climate change or whether it's equity or inclusion, it's all determined. There is no debate.
And remember, when we're talking about this, ChatGPT became accessible to the general public less than 3 months ago, okay? And already our technological landscape, our information landscape has been so transformed. Now imagine what's going to happen a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. What we're going to be seeing increasingly is that all of these decisions in education, in admissions, in the medical field, dating site algorithms, anything you can imagine, are going to be made for us by these opaque algorithms. And right now, at least, we can play with the algorithm and clearly see the biases. When 10 years from now, or 20 years from now, when you have a generation of kids that has grown up surrounded by this stuff, the biases are going to be invisible to them.
Yeah, then what? It's just going to be fact, even if it's not fact. Alexander, this is such a huge topic. We need to do a whole hour on it. Thank you so much. And the dangerous move Putin just made, and Biden, well, he
As Americans have the capacity now, as we've had in the past, to do whatever needs to be done to preserve this last and greatest bastion of freedom. In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.